Let's be real. Global supply chains are under a kind of pressure we've never seen before. You've got geopolitical tensions, costs that are just skyrocketing. It feels like a constant state of firefighting. But, out of all this chaos, there's a really fascinating story of transformation starting to emerge. And it all begins with a pretty surprising number. So, a recent PwC survey of operations leaders dropped this bombshell. A massive 91% of them are planning significant, and I mean significant, changes to their supply chain strategies. And what's driving it? Specifically, shifts in U.S. trade policy. We're not talking about a little tweak here and there. This is a fundamental rethink of how business gets done on a global scale. And this quote from that same survey just hits the nail on the head. It really captures the mood out there. The pressure is on. Change isn't optional anymore. It's inevitable. So leaders have to act, and they have to act fast. The only real question left is, how? So, what's the first thing you do when your supply chain is, metaphorically on fire? Well, for most companies, the answer is technology. The logic seems pretty simple, right? If we're facing constant disruption, we need the latest and greatest digital tools, especially AI, to fight back and try to get some control. And you can see here, leaders are definitely putting their money where their mouth is. Over half of the companies they talk to have already integrated AI into their operations. They're not just dipping a toe in the water. We're talking major investments. Okay, but here's the twist, and honestly, it is a big one. That same survey revealed that a staggering 92% of those very same leaders say their tech investments have not fully delivered the results they were hoping for. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Nearly everyone is spending big, and nearly everyone is coming away disappointed. And what's really fascinating is why these big bets aren't paying off. The top culprits: integration complexity and data issues. Turns out you can't just buy a shiny new AI tool, plug it in, and expect magic to happen. The underlying systems, the data, it all has to be ready. And for almost half of these companies, it just isn't. And that creates this huge gap between the promise of tech and the reality. So that brings us to the real heart of the issue. If just buying new tech isn't the magic bullet everyone hoped for, what are we missing here? What is the real, fundamental impact of digitalization on a business? Well, the answer, it turns out, is a lot deeper and a lot more interesting than just making things run a little bit faster. And this is where new academic research completely reframes the whole conversation. It introduces this idea called the Great Value Chain Expansion. And the core concept here is that the true power of digital isn't just about optimizing what you already do, it's about fundamentally changing what your company is even capable of doing. Okay, so first, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. A global value chain, or a GVC, is basically every single step that's involved in bringing a product to life. Think of it like a really long assembly line, stretching from the absolute earliest raw materials all the way to the final customer holding the product. This picture here does a great job of showing what we mean. On the far left, you've got what we call upstream activities. That's like sourcing raw materials. Over on the right, you've got downstream activities, getting the finished product into the customer's hands. And the slice of that line that a single company handles itself, that's called its span of stages. For decades, the name of the game in business was specialization. A company would find a really narrow part of that value chain, its niche, and just focus on doing that one thing better, faster, and cheaper than anyone else. It relied on a whole web of different partners to handle everything else. But now, take a look at this. This chart is from a study of thousands of companies, and it shows something pretty amazing. There's a clear, powerful connection. As a company's level of digitalization goes up, so does its span of control over the value chain. This isn't just a theory, you can see it in the data. Digital is fundamentally rewriting business strategy. So, here's the huge takeaway. These digital tools are for way more than just efficiency. They're actually empowering companies to take on more of the value chain themselves. They're moving upstream to control their own materials and downstream to get closer to their customers. In a world that's so unpredictable, they're using digital tools to control more of their own destiny. So the question is, how does this actually work, right? What is it about being digital that lets a company completely rewrite the rules and expand its reach like this? Well, the research points to 4 key mechanisms. Digitalization supercharges a company's ability to innovate. It changes the kind of people you need to hire. It helps you get way smarter with your resources, and it absolutely crushes the cost of information. Each one of these makes it easier for a firm to manage a bigger, more complex operation. Okay, let's start with innovation. Digital tools aren't just faster calculators. They open up entirely new ways to invent things. By using massive amounts of data, companies can totally reshape their R&D. And when you have that stronger innovation muscle, you can confidently take on more complex parts of production that you used to have to outsource. Next up is the shift in labor. Digital tools are great at automating all those low-skilled, repetitive tasks. But what that does is create this huge new demand for highly skilled people who can do complex analytical work. And to manage a wider piece of the value chain, you need that upgraded human capital. You just need smarter, more capable people on your team. Third, you've got just plain smarter resource allocation. With better data and more processing power, companies can see their own operations with incredible clarity. This lets them optimize how they use everything, cut down on waste, and even get ahead of production delays before they become a real problem. It just makes managing complexity a lot less daunting. And finally, and this one might be the biggest game changer of all, digitalization absolutely crushes information costs. Think about what it used to cost to find a reliable supplier, track a shipment around the world, or verify the quality of a part. Those costs have plummeted, and that makes managing a global operation so much cheaper and easier than it was even 10 years ago. Okay, so let's tie all of this together. We started with all the chaos in today's supply chains and the pretty disappointing results from just throwing tech at the problem. But now we can see there's a much bigger picture here. The new reality is about using these digital tools not just to survive the chaos, but to build an entirely new kind of company. It really all comes down to a choice between two different mindsets. You've got the old way, which is kind of like triage. You have a very narrow focus, you're always reacting to the latest fire, and you're super dependent on your partners. Then there's the new digital way, which is all about transformation, building a broader span of control, being proactive and predictive, and becoming a lot more self-reliant. And this is the real prize. At the end of the day, the goal isn't just about shaving a few percentage points off your costs. It's about building a business that is fundamentally faster, smarter, and most importantly, more resilient. One that's actually built to thrive in a world that's always going to be a little uncertain. You see, the whole conversation has shifted. The question is no longer if you should use digital tools. The real strategic question every single leader should be asking themselves is this: what kind of company are we going to use these incredible tools to become?